If you are following along with me because you know you need to grow in your leadership, then I hate to tell you, but you might only be getting about 10% of the value from this. However, I am going to explain in the end of this video how you can up that to 70% with just one very simple change. So stick around because you are going to want to know what you need to do. Now, I hear that fairly frequently from people, right? They say, I know I need to lead better, and that's why I follow you. They'll subscribe to the YouTube channel, they'll hang out with me here, they join the email list. Lots of times they'll save posts on Instagram or LinkedIn because one day, they are going to take their leadership development really seriously. Usually, they think that they're going to take it seriously when they get to the next level. They'll say things like, when I become a director, then I'm really going to focus on leadership. Right now, I only have 8 or 10 people reporting to me, but once I have an entire department, then I'm going to buckle down on this. Right now, I'm just trying to survive in the role that I'm in. Once I get the promotion, that's when I'm going to invest in developing these skills. So the books, the YouTube videos, the TikToks, or the Reels, they become this bookmark of sorts, right? For the skills that they want to learn later. Not now, later. And putting that book up on the shelf, even with that perfect page marked for exactly what you want to work on later, it's going to keep you stuck in a pattern that holds you back and makes even the job you are in, even the one that is familiar to you, or dare I say easy for you, draining your energy and your focus. And the interesting thing is, you already know that something isn't working. That's why you follow along. That's why you subscribe, because you feel it every single day at work. You repeat yourself in the meetings, and somehow the team still isn't clear on what it is that they're supposed to be doing. You delegate the project, and it comes back to you as a rough draft. It needs so much fixing that you end up just doing the work yourself. You become what one client called a professional taker-backer. You hand the work out and it comes right back to you. Even if you think your team is strong, even if you have a great relationship with them and they have all of the skills that you need, maybe you're finding yourself getting questioned by your boss more than you'd like. Not necessarily because you and your team aren't doing the work or you're doing something wrong, but because you aren't communicating the impact of the work that you are doing, the work that they are doing, and how it impacts the bigger picture clearly enough. So you start to wonder, why doesn't my boss see my value? Why doesn't my boss see the skills and the value of my team? But instead of fixing the leadership side of things, you just tell yourself the same thing that so many ambitious professionals believe, that this is just part of paying your dues. This is just part of coming up in the leadership world. You suffer through it now, right? At the lower levels, at the mid-range levels. And then once you get to senior leadership, then you'll have it all figured out. Or even if senior leadership isn't the goal, if you just want a really healthy leadership relationship with your boss, with your peers, with your team, you think it's just going to come with time. But here's the truth. It's sort of a chicken and egg conundrum, and most people discover which one comes first a little bit later than they'd like. But let me give you the secret. You have it backwards, all right? You don't wait to find the margin in your day to lead. You learn to lead strategically, and it gives you back your time. You don't wait to hit the next level and then lead strategically. You learn to lead strategically, and that makes you promotable. Strategic leadership isn't a skill reserved for the corner office. It's a skill that becomes visible long before the title changes. And the best time to learn it is actually right now. Even if you're in a role or an organization that you don't plan to stay in, the time is still now. Even if you think that you're next in line for whatever that next promotion is that's going to come up, the time is still now. Even if you feel stuck because you want something more, but you think there's someone else who would be more qualified than you, who has more credentials than you do. In fact, if you're in one of those spots, this could be the perfect time to start developing your strategic leadership skills. And I'm going to give you 3 very specific reasons why each one of those makes this the perfect time to lead strategically. The perfect time for you to learn the skills that you need to be the most promotable and the best qualified person in the job that you're in, so that you have the most margin and space that you can have in that role. All right, number 1. It's because your current job is the safest place to practice. A lot of people assume that they should wait until they're at that next level before they learn how to lead differently. They've been treading water so long that they just assume they can still do it rather than learn something new now and apply it down the road as things get more difficult, right? Better to stay with the devil you know, even though it's hard, even when you're overwhelmed, even when you're overworked, than to learn something different and go through something that's also hard, but a new kind of hard, right? But the reality is, the lower the stakes, the better the learning environment for you. So right now, you already know the systems. You already know the people. You already know the tasks. You already know the expectations. You already know the politics of your job or your department or the organization as a whole. And that makes this the perfect laboratory for leadership development because you get to practice. You can practice communicating priorities more clearly. Because even if you don't agree with them, even if they aren't coming to you as clearly as possible, you can more easily identify that. And you can practice delegating in a way that actually builds ownership because you have the experience to know what good looks like and you can articulate that more clearly. And you can practice connecting daily work to the bigger picture because you know the daily work in and out and you can see the connection. If you wait until you're in that next role or you're in that next organization, you risk bringing these bad habits or maybe just these lower level habits into a new and clean environment. Now, let me just give you a visual for this, right? If your company has ever implemented a new software or a new system, you know that this is true. You can't have people who were working on an old clunky process jump right into the brand new live version of the new system. There's going to be errors. There's going to be, things broken because they're clicking on the wrong buttons or they're trying to follow something that just doesn't apply anymore. Everything's built and it's tested. And then where do you train? Where do you practice? In the sandbox, in this safe environment where you can allow yourself to make some of those mistakes because you know you are just building towards this future cleaner version. You know that if you knock off a little bit of rust, it's going to be okay because you're learning a better way to handle it. And once you get into that live version of the software, it is so much easier to just keep moving forward. Now you can learn all of those tactical skills, all those technical skills that you need in that new system, just like you would need in a new role or a new organization, because you've already built the foundation of how it works. All right, I hope that makes sense. Let's talk about number 2. You start practicing this leader development now because strategic leaders get noticed faster. Here is something that so many professionals underestimate. Senior leaders, the ones who are making the decisions, the ones who are truly calling the shots, they aren't just watching what gets done. Yes, the results matter. Yes, the end of the day, point blank, what happened matters, but that's not it. It also matters how it got done and how the leaders were thinking about every component of it. And strategic leaders, they stand out because they frame problems clearly. They aren't just looking at what broke, they're looking at what happened upstream and downstream from the problem. And they can frame that clearly. They can communicate priorities concisely. So it isn't just that everything's important in the business. It's that we have these top three things that we are focused on right now, and these are the levers that are going to propel us forward. A strategic leader knows what those are at a moment's notice. And strategic leaders can connect the work that they're doing to those organizational goals. And they also know when to cut bait. If something doesn't follow through to those top three or top five, they aren't spending time on it or asking their team to spend time on it either. And they bring solutions instead of just updates. And this is because I hear from people all the time that they don't have time to develop their leadership. They don't have time to invest in any of their professional development because they're spending so much time in meetings and sending emails, and all they're doing is providing updates. They are hearing from their team what they're working on, right? They're giving their team work to do. These are updates just popping back and forth. And then they're updating their boss on all of the work that's happening with their team. Again, whether that's emails or meetings or putting it in Slack, it doesn't matter. They are wasting time just doing updates. But when you can frame problems from start to end and identify what the root of the issue is, and also what the solutions are to cure it, and how those solutions and the work that they're doing on a daily basis connects to the overall goals of the organization. When you start consistently communicating that way, people start to see you differently. You start to not need all of those constant updates. And you can instead use that time to leverage yourself forward. You stop sounding like someone who's just organizing the team, someone who's just supervising the tasks that are going on for those that report to them. And you start to sound like someone who already belongs at that next level. And that is oftentimes the difference between someone being seen as a strong employee, right? Versus a future leader. I want to tell you about a client of mine who did just that. She was working in an organization and she was over her head in work. She was working a minimum of 12 to 14 hours a day, and she was complaining about how she never got to see the sun. Can you imagine? Maybe you can even relate. You get there while it's dark, you leave while it's dark, and it's just draining on your energy, on your mind, on your family. And all you want to do is to at least be effective. Well, they knew she was a strong employee, but they questioned whether or not she would be able to move on from that point because it was taking so much effort for her to just hit the bar, right? She was strong, she was doing well, but it took so many hours out of her day and so much stress in her life to be able to hit it. How could they even consider moving her to that next level? Once we started working together and she was able to see how strategically everything was webbed together, she started to understand that it was only the work that was a top priority that she actually needed to put her energy into. That she could use all of those meetings that she was having to communicate where the work that they were doing was taking them, right? Now, she ended up not staying with that organization. She had built this reputation for so long that it was really difficult to change. But again, because she had started to build those skills, she could very easily in interviews and in some company research figure out what would benefit the next organization that she wanted to go to. And so when she decided to leave that organization, when she decided to leave that first hospital that she was at, she became the director of operations at the next one. She moved herself up in a different organization because she learned those skills in the sandbox that she was in. It made her noticeable in the organization that she was in and in that first meeting that she had with those other organizations. All right, let's move on to number 3, because this is the one that is really going to make a big difference for you, right? What I've talked about before, number 1, number 2, those are about moving on in the from the position that you're in, right? If whether you're looking for a promotion, whether you're looking to get out and broaden your horizons. But this one, number 3, it can help you today because the problems that you are experiencing now, the pain and the frustration and the overwhelm that you are feeling right now, those aren't tactical problems, my friend. Those aren't character flaws. Those aren't workload. Those are leadership skill problems. And if you are repeating yourself constantly to your team, you have a clarity problem. If you are taking work back after you've been delegating it, you have an ownership problem. And if your boss questions every decision that you make, then you have a strategic communication problem. And the interesting thing is, those problems, they don't just magically disappear because you get a new title. And I'm talking about any new title in the organization. They also don't magically disappear just because you've been in seat for 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is. In fact, as time goes on, they get bigger. They get harder to work around, just like that client I was talking about. They get bigger and deeper with each new title that you get. Again, because whether it's a higher title or lateral or even lower, you are learning a new topic and you're applying your same old bad leadership habits to it. So if you're living it now, if you're feeling this pain now, you're feeling the frustration of nobody listening to you. You're feeling the fear and the angst because your boss always seems to be questioning what you and the team are doing. Or you're feeling exhausted because you just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Know that this is going to continue to get heavier with time. Now is the time to build the muscle, right? Now is the time to build your strength. And let's just give it a little bit of a visual here, right? Let's think about this in actual strength terms. Let's think about like your biceps, okay? So a supervisor, just for the sake of this illustration, the sake of you being able to see it in your head, let's think of a supervisor as being expected to lift 50 pounds once a week. They wouldn't really need to work out for that, right? If you had to walk to the back of the store to pick up a 50-pound bag of dog food, you could pick it up. And if you had to carry it to the front of the store, you don't need giant muscles for that. You're probably going to need to take a break, right? You're going to need to shift it on your arms a little bit. It's going to slow you down as you walk up to the front of the store, but you could get it there. And if you only had to do it once a week, you could sort of muster through, right? Now, if you're a middle manager, let's say, for example, you're expected to lift that same 50 pounds, you're expected to carry that same bag of dog food once a day. It would eat up a ton of your time, right? So you might need to do a little bit more of a workout in order to be able to lift that 50-pound bag of dog food and carry it up to the front of the store every single day without it eating up a huge portion of your day. And if you're a senior leader, you might be expected to carry that same bag of dog food, right? That same 50 pounds, but you have to keep it with you at all times, every single day. Now, they could get crushed under the weight of it. They could be extremely slow and struggling to do everything they need to do. Imagine trying to have one conversation while you're holding 50 pounds that you aren't equipped to hold, and you just have been holding it for an hour. You've been shifting it around, setting it down, picking it back up for an hour. If you're not prepared for it, it is going to crush you under the weight. You aren't going to be able to keep up. Now, so let's say you recognize that either you want to get to that senior leadership level where you can just carry that heavy weight around with you all of the time and feel good about it, or you just want to be to the point that you can lift it up once a week or once a day and not have it feel like it's inhibiting you, right? Maybe you could start lifting 10, 15 pounds a few times a day, and pretty soon all of it would feel easier. Even if you're that supervisor who's only doing it once a week, or that manager who's only lifting it up once a day, with that little bit of prep, everything feels lighter. You can move faster. You can keep up with those senior leaders that you're working with. You're walking with them a little bit closer. And when it's time to add to one of them, You become this natural choice because you're already running with them. The lifting, the practice, that consistent growth in your biceps, and for our purposes, in your leadership skills, that is your separation. Now, maybe you've heard of separation season. Ed Milet talks about it a lot. And honestly, if you spend any time with me, you've heard about it for sure because I love this idea. When Ed talks about it, he's talking about weekends and holidays and evenings. But let's be realistic because I am all about balance here. You can find a separator season in a Monday or a Friday. Most people aren't working that hard on those days. If you actually put in the reps, if you put in that 10 to 15 pound weight and just do a few sets of 8 on those, you're going to get stronger. If your separation season could maybe be one lunch hour a week. I'm not talking about giving up all of your free time. I'm talking about using some very specific time that other people waste scrolling, chit-chatting, complaining. You just put this time intentionally into, maybe that's your coaching meeting. Maybe that is when you write out your emails following a very specific framework. You find that time that those other people are just wasting and you fill it with practicing and demonstrating your skills. Now, I mentioned putting things into a communication framework, and the communication framework is something that all of my clients practice with to help them communicate concisely and with impact to persuade people to do the work that they need to do. It helps in delegation, it helps with coaching up, it helps in all forms of communication. Now, I had one client who said, I bet most of your clients work on this weekly, right? Because we meet weekly for our coaching calls. And I said, yeah, I think most of them do spend some intentional time just before coaching, and then we talk about it in our coaching session. She said, well, I'm not going to do it weekly then. I'm going to do it daily. I am going to set up a tracker so that I am working on this communication framework every single day. Because if I want results that nobody else gets, then I have to do the things that nobody else is willing to do. Think about that. If I want results that nobody else gets, then I am going to have to do the things that nobody else will do. She's not treating this communication framework as a bookmark. She's not putting it up on the shelf to say, that is really smart. I should do that. And then walking away and getting herself a cookie. She is putting in the time and the effort to build the reps. And the funny thing is, it doesn't take her any more time. Every time she has to send an email, she puts it into the framework. She still had to send the email. She just did it with intentionality. When she would, used to spend her time prepping for meetings by reading through her notes, she now structures her notes intentionally to follow the framework. And oddly enough, you can probably find this communication framework. I did a video on it years ago, probably at this point. And I used to send it out to prospective coaching clients who decided not to sign up with me as basically that's okay. I want to be able to help anyways. So watch this video and put this into practice. Let me know what kind of results you find. I was bookmarking it for them, and they still never opened the book. They still never put it into practice. When I would follow up with them months later, they would have nothing to show for it. Now, I want to leave you with this. Passive learning, it has a 10 to 15% retention. And that means that you can watch all of the YouTube videos in the world, right? You can read all of the books on leadership or any other topic that you want to learn about, and your brain is only going to retain 10 to 15% of it. That's not great. That makes it feel like professional development is all a waste of time, right? Because I'm only taking away 10 to 15% of all of this. You separate yourself, you find those separator seasons in the action. Because active learning, so things like getting coaching and then actually applying what you learned, having that accountability to ask you about how you've applied it and how it worked, that helps you retain 70% of what you learned. Imagine you have the ability right now, today, to go from a 10% retention to a 70% retention just by taking action. That is the only thing that you need to do. Because when you demonstrate your abilities, you show your brain that this is useful, that we want to continue going down this path, right? In that sandbox, right? With the team and the work that you know so well, you can use those skills that you're learning. They aren't going to be perfect, but they are going to be so much further ahead from the people who are doing nothing and the people who are just passively taking it all in. That is how you stand out, my friend. That is how you beat your peers and the prior version of you. That is how you get great and become the obvious choice for that next promotion, regardless of what your credentials are. Because those letters behind your name, those certificates that you have posted up on your wall, I hate to tell you, but they don't matter if they were all passive learning. You are barely separated at that point. But you can separate yourself right now. Now is the time to grow your skills and be the leader that you want to be tomorrow. Now is that time. And if you are committed to hitting that 70% and separating yourself, please comment separate on this video because I want to be there to help you and to cheer you along. All right. I know we got a little intense there towards the end, but I hope that this was helpful for you. Again, if you are committed to that 70%, I want you to comment separate below, and I will see you in